Can the Expanse Osiris Reborn become the new Mass Effect successor? I played a closed beta last night and I came out of it thinking one thing. This game is not trying to be cozy and cute. It already feels a lot harsher, heavier, and a lot more brutal than I thought it would be. If you're new here, hi, my name is Oren and I am a nerd. I am a huge Mass Effect fan and I'm very excited about RPGs in general. So let's start with what hit me first, the graphics. As you start playing this game, they tell you in the beginning that this game is not going to be representative of the final product. And I find that very strange because this build, this closed beta, looks like a polished enough to play game that could stand on its own. And I'm talking only about the graphics here. I'm not talking about this being a disconnected adventure from the rest of the game. I've played closed betas before and I've seen how some games can look, and they can look very terrible. This didn't look terrible. This looked amazing. I loved every part of it, and it all looked so polished and just so amazing to look at. So I'm not really sure what else they plan to do before the final game comes out. But yeah, this is a point in your favor, Owlcat Games. I loved how it looks so much. So now let's leave the graphics alone and start talking about the meat of the game. And that's the two modes that the game offers to play, which is exploration and battle. We'll start with exploration. So exploration essentially means that you are roaming around an open space where people can be found and where quests can be acquired. If you've ever played Mass Effect, this is essentially the same as being in a community area, on the Citadel, on the Normandy, like all of these places that you can actually talk to people and have conversations and receive and complete quests. One intriguing thing that I noticed, and maybe that's intentional for the beta and might be changed in the final game, I noticed that you can't talk to Jay. Like, Jay talks to you as you go across places, like as you walk and as you interact with other people, but you can't choose Jay and say, hey, I want to talk to you right now. This is something that you could have done in other games, like in Dragon Age, for example. You could have just clicked on someone and had a conversation wherever you so choose. Some of the things you might talk about would be reserved for the camp or where you're like not in public, but you could still talk to your companions either way. That's not true for Mass Effect, which I am thinking this game draws a lot of inspiration from. In Mass Effect, you can only talk to people when you're back in the Normandy or when you're in a public space where they also can be found, like the Citadel. So in terms of exploration, I found a lot of things that you can do. You can interact with Luciana, which is a shop owner in the Pinkwater 4 station. You can also talk with Larry, which gives you a quest that you need to complete in a later part of the game. And there are also other people that you know from, that the character knows from being in Pinkwater 4 station before, like Chimitsu, which seems to be familiar to our heroes, but not really interactable beyond like talking to her to say hi. And of course, you have Zafar, which is a potential companion, I believe, because he is very instrumental in getting you out of Pinkwater 4 station. So exploration-wise, this beta was very, very good in giving you a taste of how things are interacting with characters around the world. And right after we talk to O'Connell, which is like our boss, no matter what you choose, you are directly starting the mission where you are introduced to battle. My own experience with the combat in this game feels very satisfying. There was a surprisingly long variety of weapons you can find in this 2-hour adventure, and I really enjoyed putting them to use because it does feel a little bit like Mass Effect. You have abilities and you have your guns. And things that I didn't try that much were what you can do with your suit. Like, there are things that you can gather that allow you to enable some abilities, like putting the shocked state on an enemy. So it feels like they kind of found a way to replace the element of biotic power in Mass Effect with these abilities that are pretty satisfying to use. Also, the battle makes sense. I shot enemies in the head, and even though they had a shield, they still got the hit and I downed them quicker that way. So the game does respect physiology, essentially. Some of the combat also takes place in space itself, like outside of the ship that you're on. And I really enjoyed that part too, because it gives you a physical challenge. What happens when you try to defy gravity and essentially fly outside of the ship? Sometimes you can get pushed away from the ship and it's always moving. So that's something that you should be aware of. And essentially, your boots are what keeps you stuck to the ground, because if you didn't have grav boots, you would fly away. You would be released into space. And the game made a good job in making you understand that in a particular scene. So now that we have a little bit of a taste of the game in terms of combat, in terms of exploration and the graphics, let's talk a little bit about the storytelling, because I played this game twice and I understand now how darker it can get. When you begin the beta, you arrive at Pinkwater Force Station and you need to talk to your boss, O'Connell, to get him to either cover for you or join you in the fight against Protogen. The first time I played, I chose to try to persuade him to help us fight these people. From that moment on, as the mission began, I found a lot of dead people in essentially every place I went. Yesterday, when I did the second playthrough, I chose to just cover us and not get involved. And when that happens, you find no dead people around, and the station survives. If you did not convince them to help you, Protogen will leave them alone. But if they did try to help you and they killed people, as you finally flee on your ship, you will see that the station gets destroyed. This is a very particular type of storytelling. Sometimes you think that the persuasion option means a better outcome because it makes you work for it. But that's not common sense. If you try to convince people to shoot at the enemy will consider them as eligible targets too. And the fact that they used Larry's gift to his mother to try to drill it in was so painful. So yeah, I'm very excited about it, but let's talk about the overall impressions. Okay, so overall this closed beta gave us a good taste of what it's like playing the game. This was essentially, as I understand it, a mission. I don't know how it would look in terms of like the overall storytelling of the game. Like, where do you go to sleep? Where do you go to, like, this feels like the beginning, because this is also part of the inciting incident of the beginning of season 1 of The Expanse. So it does feel a little bit like part of the beginning sequence. You don't have your ship yet, you just stole it. You don't have a crew yet. Zafar is just now joining you, and all of the crewmates that you had before are dead. So it's essentially just you and your sibling now. So those are the things that I'm excited to see more of. Like, what happens when you're in your downtime? Where do you go? Where do you hang out? Where do you talk to your companions? How progression looks? Is this going to be like a star map that you can choose to go from planet to planet? Or is it going to be based on storytelling? Like, you would have people to talk to and then they'll take you to places. And how much exploration would actually mean in terms of outside of places like the one we just saw? Is there going to be exploration in space? And I feel it is going to matter because the leveling up system is defined as leveling up points for combat and leveling up points for exploration. So I hope it would have enough opportunities to level up in both, which means in exploration, you would either have to visit places you haven't been to, or you would have to do things outside of combat, which would be considered part of the exploration experience. And I think that also means probably doing quests that are not tied to combat. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm still very curious about. I want to see more. I'm so thankful to Alcat giving their founders the ability to play the game this early. And yeah, I hope there will be more opportunities like this down the road. Have you played the beta? What did you think about it if you did? If you haven't, are you planning to get the game now? Let me know what you think about this whole thing in the comments below. I would love to nerd out with you on this new, exciting RPG that's coming our way. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.